The Welsh Guards, part of the Guards Division, is one of the Foot Guards regiments of the British Army. It was founded on the 26th of February 1915 by Royal Warrant of George V. History. Creation. The Welsh Guards came into existence on the 26th of February 1915 by Royal Warrant of George V in order to include Wales in the national component to the Foot Guards. Though the order to raise the regiment had been given by the King to Earl Kitchener, Secretary of State for War, on 6 February 1915. They were the last of the Guards to be created, with the Irish Guards coming into being in 1900. Just 3 days later, the 1st Battalion Welsh Guards mounted its first King's Guard at Buckingham Palace on 1 March 1915, St. David's Day. On 17 August 1915, the 1st Battalion sailed for France to join the Guards Division to commence its participation in the First World War. Its first battle was some months after its initial arrival, at Lewes on 27 September 1915. The regiment's first Victoria Cross came 2 years later in July 1917, awarded to Sergeant Robert by interwar. Soon after the end of the war in 1918, the 1st Welsh Guards returned home, and where they would be based for much of the interwar period, performing training and ceremonial duties, such as the changing of the guard and trooping the colour. In 1929, the 1st Welsh Guards deployed to Egypt, where they joined the Cairo Brigade, where they stayed for only a brief period of time, returning home in 1930. Just prior to the outbreak of the Second World War, the 1st Welsh Guards were dispatched to Gibraltar, where they remained. Upon the outbreak of war in September 1939, the 2nd Battalion Welsh Guards was created in 1939. Second World War. The Welsh Guards were increased to 3 battalions during the Second World War. The 1st Battalion fought valiantly in all the campaigns of the Northwest European Theatre. The 2nd Battalion, part of the 20th Independent Infantry Brigade, fought briefly in Boulogne in late May 1940, whilst the 1st fought in the battles of Belgium and France as part of the British Expeditionary Force (GHQ) troops. In May 1940, at the Battle of Arras, the Welsh Guards gained the 2nd Victoria Cross by Lieutenant Christopher Furness, who was killed in action. The 1st Battalion was subsequently part of the retreat to Dunkirk, where they were involved in the legendary Dunkirk evacuation that saw nearly 340,000 British and French troops return to the United Kingdom, against all odds. The 3rd Battalion Welsh Guards, which was formed at Beavers Lane Camp in 1941, fought throughout the arduous North African Campaign, in the Tunisia Campaign and the Italian campaigns in 1943. While they battled on in those theatres, the 1st and 2nd joined the Guards Armoured Division, with the 1st Battalion being infantry, assigned to the 32nd Guards Brigade, and the 2nd Armoured, part of the 6th Guards Armoured Brigade. The 2 battalions worked closely, being the first troops to re-enter Brussels on 3 September 1944 after an advance of 100 miles in one day in what was described as an armoured lash, unequalled for speed in this or any other war, led by Major General Sir Alan Henry Dare, the divisional commander. Post-war, shortly after the end of the war, the 3rd Battalion was disbanded while the 2nd Battalion was placed in suspended animation. In 1947, the 1st Welsh Guards were dispatched to Palestine, then under British control, while it was in a volatile and violent situation. The Welsh Guards were part of the 1st Guards Brigade and performed internal security duties while there, before leaving in 1948 during the British withdrawal and when the State of Israel was declared. The regiment had its colour trooped for the first time in 1949. In 1950 the regiment arrived in West Germany as part of the 4th Guards Brigade, part of the British Army of the Rhine. In 1952 the regiment joined the Berlin Brigade in West Berlin, an enclave in Communist East Germany during tense times between the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and the Warsaw Pact. The Welsh Guards returned home the following year and soon after deployed to the British-controlled Suez Canal zone in Egypt. As previously in Palestine, the Welsh Guards' time in Egypt was quite turbulent. They performed internal security duties there. They remained in the SEZ until the British withdrawal in 1956. In 1960 the regiment deployed to West Germany again, and in 1965 to Aden, another part of the declining British Empire. They were to return home the following year. In 1970 the regiment arrived again in West Germany, this time at Munster, as part of 4th Armoured Brigade. In 1972 came deployment to Northern Ireland, then embroiled in violence later known as the Troubles. During its tour of duty the regiment lost Sergeant Philip Price in a terrorist attack by the Provisional Irish Republican Army on the Oxford Street bus depot in Belfast, one of a series of terrorist attacks in the city which became known as Bloody Friday. The following year the Welsh Guards were dispatched to the province again, and during this period lost Guardsman David Roberts in a landmine explosion. In October 1975 till March 1976 the Welsh Guards were part of the British contingent of the United Nations force deployed to Cyprus in the aftermath of the Turkish invasion of the island in 1974. In 1977 the regiment arrived in West Berlin again, and then in 1979 once more. In the midst of the volatile situation in Northern Ireland, they lost Guardsman Paul Fryer to a booby trap bomb. On the 9th of July 1981, Daniel Barrett, aged 15 years, was sitting on the garden wall of his home in Havana Court, Ardoyne, North Belfast, when he was shot dead by a soldier. Many people have mistakenly said this was a Welsh Guardsman, however no Welsh Guardsman was serving in Ulster at the time. Falklands War. In 1982, the Welsh Guards formed part of the 5th Infantry Brigade of the British task force sent to liberate the Falkland Islands from Argentinian occupation during the Falklands War. On the 7th of June they were on board the ill-fated Sir Galahad, which was accompanied by Sir Tristram, waiting to be landed at Bluff Cove, though they were delayed from doing so. However, attack was imminent after the landing craft were spotted by Argentinian observers. At 2 a.m., 5 Dagger and 5 A4 Skyhawk aircraft were seen over the Falklands. Shortly afterwards, the Daggers were the first to attack. Only a short time later, the Skyhawks reached Fitzroy, with 3 of the aircraft hitting the Sir Galahad 2 or more times with horrific consequences. Sir Tristram was also hit, which killed 2 crewmen. Both ships were ablaze. The attack on Sir Galahad culminated in high casualties, 48 dead, 32 of them Welsh Guards, 11 other army personnel and 5 crewmen from Sir Galahad herself. There were many wounded, many suffering from horrendous burns caused by fire from the burning ships, the best known being Simon Weston. The burnt-out Sir Galahad was later scuttled at sea to allow her to become a war grave. Present day. In 1984 the Welsh Guards arrived in Hona, West Germany as part of the 22nd Armoured Brigade, and 2 years later arrived in Northern Ireland for another tour of duty before returning to Germany. The regiment returned home in 1988 and in 1992 arrived in Northern Ireland for a 2-year deployment as part of 8th Infantry Brigade. During the tour of Northern Ireland, the BBC filmed the documentary In the Company of Men by Molly Dineen, which filmed a deployment to southern Fermanagh during the regiment's tour. On 6 September 1997, 12 guardsmen of the Welsh Guards, led by the adjutant of the 1st Battalion, the Prince of Wales Company, Captain Richard Williams MC, hero in 1993 of the Khmer Rouge incident in which he was captured defending civilians there, were pulled from security patrols in South Armagh, Northern Ireland, and together with members of the King's Troop, Royal Horse Artillery, escorted the casket of Diana, Princess of Wales, from Kensington Palace to Westminster Abbey. In 2002, the regiment arrived in Bosnia as part of SFOR, a NATO-led force intended to ensure peace and stability in the Balkan nation. During the deployment, the Queen Mother died. A number of officers of the Welsh Guards stood in vigil around the Queen Mother's coffin, which was lying in state in Westminster Hall, one of a number of regiments to do so. The regiment returned home from its deployment to Bosnia later in the year. It was involved in Operation Fresco, the British Armed Forces' response to the firefighters' strike. The Welsh Guards covered the Midlands area, primarily in Birmingham, using the antiquated Army Green Goddess fire engines. In 2003, the Welsh Guards experienced a unique moment in their history when they moved from Aldershot to Rafts in Athen, Wales. In 2005, the Welsh Guards were part of Operation Telic and were based in Basra, southern Iraq. Here they used valuable relationship-building skills learned from the time in Bosnia to build a bond between the regiment and the locals. In 2006, the regiment returned to London as a public duties battalion. It will alternate this role with the Grenadier Guards. The regiment deployed to Bosnia in October 2006, replacing the 2nd Battalion, the Yorkshire Regiment. In November 2007, the regiment deployed to Belize at short notice to take part in jungle warfare training. They returned just before Christmas. In 2008, the Welsh Guards moved from London to Lille Barracks in Aldershot in preparation for deployment on Operation Herrick-10 in Afghanistan. In April 2009, the Welsh Guards deployed on Operation Herrick-10 in Afghanistan. 6 members of the battalion were killed, among them a platoon commander, a company commander and a battalion commander. It was the first time since the Korean War that a single battalion had lost officers at these 3 key levels of leadership. The 6-month tour was chronicled in the book Dead Men Risen, The Welsh Guards and the Defining Story of Britain's War in Afghanistan by Toby Harnden, which won the Orwell Prize for Books 2012. On 1 July 2009, Lieutenant Colonel Rupert Thornlow MBE was killed along with Trooper Joshua Hammond of the 2nd Royal Tank Regiment, following the detonation of an IED in Afghanistan under the BVS-10 Viking during Operation Panther's Claw. Lieutenant Colonel Thornlow was the highest-ranking British Army officer killed since Lieutenant Colonel H. Jones VCOBE in the Falkland Islands. Museums. There are 2 museums with artifacts and memorabilia about the regiment. The Welsh Guards Museum is located in Oswestry, Shropshire. The Guards Museum, located in Wellington Barracks in London, is home of the 5 regiments of Foot Guards. Future. The July 2013 Army plan states that 1st Battalion, the Welsh Guards, will be a Foxhound mounted battalion under 11th Infantry Brigade under Army 2020. This will be the case until 1 September 2016, when its role will rotate with the other Foot Guard regiments. Training. Recruits of the Guards Division go through a 30-week grueling training program at the Infantry Training Centre. The training is 2 weeks more than the training for the regular line infantry regiments of the British Army. The extra training, carried out throughout the course, is devoted to drill and ceremonies. Regimental colonels. Regimental colonels have been Field Marshal H. M. King George V, 1915 to 1919. Field Marshal H. R. H. the Prince of Wales, 1919 to 1936. Brigadier General Lord Gowrie, 1942 to 1953. Field Marshal H. R. H. the Duke of Edinburgh, 1953 to 1975. Field Marshal H. R. H. the Prince of Wales, 1975 present. Traditions and affiliations. The Welsh Guards and other Guards regiments have a long-standing connection to the Parachute Regiment. Guardsmen who have completed P Company are transferred into the Guards Parachute Platoon, which is currently attached to 3 Para, maintaining a tradition of the No. 1 Independent Parachute Company, the original Pathfinder group of the 16th Parachute Brigade, now renamed the 16th Air Assault Brigade. The 3rd Battalion, the Royal Welsh from the Army Reserve, is paired with 1st Battalion Welsh Guards and will deploy on future operations with them. One way to distinguish between the regiments of Foot Guards is the spacing of buttons on the tunic. The Welsh Guards have buttons arranged in groups of 5. Battle Honours. The Welsh Guards have been awarded the following battle honours: Victoria Cross recipients: Sergeant Robert By VC, Lieutenant Christopher Furness VC. Order of Precedence. Alliances. Australia 5th Battalion, Royal Australian Regiment. Royal Navy, HMS Campbelltown.